Prelims 1.1 Chola legacy is a blueprint for modern India. Context: Prime Minister Narendra Modi attended the Adi Thiruvattirai festival at Gangaikonda Cholapuram, Tamil Nadu. About Adi Thiruvattirai festival, Adi Thiruvattirai is a significant Tamil Shaiva festival, celebrated at the temple to honor the deep-rooted Shaiva Bhakti tradition. It reflects the devotional legacy promoted by the Chola dynasty and celebrated through the hymns of the 63 Nayanmars, the saint poets of Tamil Shaivism. This year's celebration is especially meaningful as it aligns with the birth star Thiruvattirai Ardra of Rajendra Chola, beginning on July 23. More on news. He hailed the Chola dynasty's governance, cultural influence, and naval strength as a model for India's development. Key announcements: statues of Rajaraja Chola and Rajendra Chola I to be erected in Tamil Nadu. Commemorative coin issued in memory of Rajendra Chola I. Emphasis on integrating Chola legacy into national consciousness. Highlighted India's efforts to preserve and repatriate ancient artifacts, 600 retrieved since 2014, 36 from Tamil Nadu. Who were the Cholas? The Cholas were among the three major dynasties of early Tamilakam, often referred to as the Moovandar in Sangam literature. They also find mention in Ashoka's rock edicts. The Chola Empire saw a revival in the mid-9th century under Vijayalaya, likely a former vassal of the Pallavas. Vijayalaya Chola 8488 AD, founder of the imperial Chola Empire, rose to power by exploiting Pandya-Pallava rivalry. Captured Thanjavur from the Muttiraya dynasty, built a temple for goddess Nishumbha Sudini Durga. Initiated urban renovation of Thanjavur. Rajaraja I 985114 AD. Led naval expeditions, conquered parts of Sri Lanka, Maldives, and the west coast of India. Appointed viceroys in conquered regions: Chola Pandya Pandyanadu, Chola Lankeshwara, Sri Lanka, and Chola Ganga, Karnataka. Constructed the Brihadeshwara temple at Thanjavur. Temple inscriptions record his achievements. Supported cultural diplomacy by aiding the construction of a Buddhist vihara in Java. Rajendra I 1014-1044 Iswi. Extended control up to the Tungabhadra river and led northern campaigns up to the Ganges. Assumed the title Gangaikonda, built Gangaikonda Cholapuram to commemorate victory over Pallas. Conducted successful naval expeditions against the Srivijaya kingdom, Sumatra, expanding maritime influence. Held titles like Kadaram Kondan, Mudikonda Cholan, and Pandita Cholan. Promoted trade across the Malaya Peninsula, strengthened Chola naval power. Kulottunga I 1070-1122 Iswi. Unified eastern Chalukyas of Vengi with the Cholas, ensuring political consolidation. Introduced land surveys and revenue reforms contemporary with England's Doomsday Book. Practiced religious tolerance, though a Shaivite, supported Buddhist shrines at Nagapattinam. Faced territorial losses: Vengi, Gangavadi, and invasions by Hoysalas and Pandyas, marking the beginning of decline. Why the Chola legacy matters. Strategic and naval strength. Rajaraja Chola built a formidable navy and Rajendra Chola I led overseas expeditions to Sri Lanka, the Maldives, and Southeast Asia, marking early assertions of India's maritime power and foreign outreach. PM Modi linked this legacy to modern initiatives like Operation Sindoor, highlighting India's current focus on defense and maritime security. Administrative excellence. The Cholas pioneered local self-governance through the Kudavolai system, an early form of electoral democracy. Water management. The Cholas implemented advanced water conservation systems, like Cholagangam Lake. Cultural diplomacy and unity. The dynasty built strong trade and cultural links across Asia. PM recalled modern efforts like Kashi Tamil Sangamam and Saurashtra Tamil Sangamam that mirror the Cholas, push for cultural unity, Z cultural unity and heritage preservation, through trade, temple architecture, and diplomacy. The Cholas spread Indian influence across Southeast Asia, visible in monuments like Angkor Wat and Borobudur. PM Modi compared this to contemporary efforts like Kashi Tamil Sangamam and Saurashtra Tamil Sangamam, which aim to reinforce India's cultural bonds. PM Modi emphasized Shaivat tradition and teachings of Tirumala Anbe Shivam as guiding principles for peace and ecological balance. Referenced Shiv Shakti Point Chandrayaan-3 landing site, linking ancient tradition with modern achievements. Reiterated the Chola legacy as part of Ek Bharat, Shrestha Bharat vision. 1.2 Maratha military landscapes in UNESCO World Heritage List. Context: at the 47th session of the World Heritage Committee, held in Paris, India's nomination, Maratha military landscapes of India, was inscribed into the UNESCO World Heritage List. About this recognition, This is India's 44th World Heritage Site, 41st World Heritage Site 2023, Shantiniketan, a town in West Bengal. 42nd World Heritage Site 2023, the Sacred Ensembles of the Hoysala. 43rd World Heritage Site 2024, the Mound Burial System of Ahom Dynasty. Cultural Sites, 36. Natural Sites, 7. Mixed Site, 1. Kanchenjunga National Park, Sikkim. India's position on Global Heritage Map. India ranks 6th globally and 2nd in Asia Pacific with 44th World Heritage Sites. Italy holds the most UNESCO World Heritage Sites globally with 60, while China has the largest number in the Asia Pacific region with 59. Archaeological Survey of India (ASI) is the nodal body for World Heritage matters. About the military landscapes of the Marathas. Origin: the Maratha military landscape was established during the reign of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj in 1670 CE and persisted through successive rulers until 1818. Comprises 12 forts spanning 17th-19th centuries CE, reflecting strategic vision and architectural ingenuity of the Maratha Empire. Maharashtra 11 forts: Salem, Shivneri, Lohgad, Khandri, Raigad, Rajgad, Pratapgarh, Suvarnadug, Panhala, Vijayadurg, or Sindhudurg. Tamil Nadu 1 fort, Jinji Fort. Protection status. Protected by ASI, Shivneri, Lohgad, Raigad, Suvarnadug, Panhala, Vijayadurg, Sindhudurg, Jinji. Protected by Maharashtra government, Salem, Rajgad, Khandri, Pratapgarh. Significance. Strategic utilization of terrain. These networks exemplify how the existing terrain was utilized by the Maratha army to develop guerrilla warfare strategies. These strategies were instrumental in countering the imperial might of the Mughals on the landward side and European coastal powers from the seaward side. A unique military legacy. In the context of India's military landscape, the Maratha Empire's warfare strategy emerges as a unique and noteworthy example with the potential to be showcased to the world. United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization UNESCO. It is a specialized agency of the United Nations, established in 1945, headquartered in Paris. Dedicated to fostering international collaboration, UNESCO strives to promote peace and security by advancing educational, scientific, and cultural reforms. With 194 member states and 12 associate members, UNESCO counts India among its founding members. Criteria under World Heritage List nomination by UNESCO. The nomination process for the World Heritage List involves two categories, cultural and natural criteria. The Maratha military landscapes of India fall under the cultural criteria category. There are 6 criteria I2V for cultural sites and 4 criteria V2X for natural sites to be considered for inclusion in the World Heritage List. 1.3 Rath Yatra of Lord Jagannath. Context: 3 people died and over 50 were injured in a stampede outside Puri's Gundicha temple during the annual Rath Yatra in Puri, Orissa. About the Ratha Yatra, Z. According to Hindu mythology, Lord Jagannath, Lord Balabhadra, and Devi Subhadra go on a 9-day sojourn to their birthplace Gundicha temple, staying there until the Bahuda Yatra, which falls on July 5 this year. News in short: Z. The Yatra commemorates their journey from the 12th century Jagannath temple to the Gundicha temple, believed to be their aunt's home. Goddess Ardhasini, also known as Mausima, is considered their aunt. Z. The Rath Yatra takes place on the second day of the Odia month of Ashadha Shukla Tithi, bright fortnight every year. Religious beliefs: Z. It is believed that witnessing the deities on their chariots cleanses people of their sins and grants salvation. Z. As non-Hindus are not allowed inside the Jagannath temple, Rath Yatra allows foreign devotees to see the deities. Jagannath Temple, Z. It is a temple dedicated to Lord Jagannath, a form of Vishnu, in Puri. Z. The present temple was built in the 12th century and begun by King Anantavarman Chodaganga Deva, first of the Eastern Ganga dynasty. Z. The image of Jagannath is made of wood and is ceremoniously replaced periodically by an exact replica. Z. It is built in the Kalinga style of architecture, with the Pancharatha 5 chariots, and is built on an elevated platform. Location: on the border between Thailand's Surin province and Cambodia's Odar Mienche province. Historical significance: built around the 12th century by King Udayadityavarman II, it is dedicated to Lord Shiva, houses a shivling made from natural rock formation. Cultural importance: part of a larger complex on the ancient Khmer Highway linking Angkor, Cambodia, and Phame, Thailand. Location: situated on a plateau overlooking Cambodia's plain, the temple is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, dedicated to Shiva. Historical context: dates back to the early 11th century AD, though its origins trace to the 9th century. Cultural and architectural significance: recognized as an outstanding example of Khmer architecture, with exceptional planning and decoration integrated with the natural landscape. 2000-year-old Buddhist site found in Haryana recently. IIT Kanpur, using ground-penetrating radar (GPR), has discovered signs of ancient Buddhist stupas and structural remains in Haryana's Yamuna Nagar district. Key highlights: Z. Evidence of a Buddhist stupa. GPR reveals circular structures, old walls, and ruins 6-7 feet deep, suggesting a 2000-year-old Buddhist site. Z. Sites of discovery: Topra Kalan. Strong GPR signals indicated a buried semicircular structure, likely a stupa, near an ancient temple. Jarasandha Ka Kila, a mound here also showed signs of a circular structure, consistent with another stupa. Z. Historical significance: the site may date back to the Buddhist era or possibly the Mahabharat period, as per local oral traditions. These findings offer vital clues into ancient trade routes, religious networks, and cultural exchanges across the subcontinent. About ground-penetrating radar (GPR), Z. A non-invasive geophysical method that uses radar pulses to image the subsurface. It's like an X-ray for the ground, allowing scientists and engineers to see what's buried beneath without digging. Sheesh Mahal of Delhi. Recently, the restored Mughal-era Sheesh Mahal in Delhi's Shalimar Bagh was reopened to the public. About Sheesh Mahal. Z. Built by Sheesh Mahal was constructed in 1653, commissioned by Is-an-Nisa Begum under the reign of Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan. Z. Architectural style: it reflects classic Mughal architecture with symmetrical planning, intricate ornamentation, and integration of water features in line with Shah Jahan's grand design sensibilities. Z. Unique features: the palace's name, Sheesh Mahal, Palace of Mirrors, refers to its embellished interiors with mirror work, though much of it has deteriorated over time. Z. Use of traditional materials. Restoration involved traditional Mughal materials such as lime surkhi, lakhori bricks and organic binders like gur, belgiri, and urad dal, ensuring historical authenticity. Prelims Jor Mains 2.13 Language Policy in NEP 2020. Context: recently, the Maharashtra government revoked 2 government resolutions (GRS) which introduced Hindi as the third language. Maharashtra's language policy controversy. Z. On June 29, 2025, Maharashtra government withdrew the government resolutions GRS of April 16 which had made Hindi mandatory, while the second, June 17, made it optional but with restrictive clauses. Dr. Narendra Jadhav Committee. A committee was to consult stakeholders and recommend the implementation of 3-language policy, including the class of introduction and language choices. Evolution of the 3-language formula. Z. First Official Language Commission and the Munshi Iyengar Formula 1950 km. Munshi and N. Gopalaswamy Iyengar. After independence, strong resistance from South Indian states, particularly Tamil Nadu, to the exclusive promotion of Hindi prompted the Munshi Iyengar Compromise, Hindi as the official language, with English retained as an associate language. The Official Language Act, 1963 amended 1967 formalized the continued use of English alongside Hindi indefinitely for official purposes. Z. Kothari Commission 1964-66 The birth of the 3-language formula. The Education Commission Kothari Commission was the first to formally articulate the 3-language formula. 3-language formula given by the Kothari Commission 1964-66. First language, it will be the mother tongue, a regional language. Second language, in Hindi-speaking states it will be other modern Indian languages or English. In non-Hindi-speaking states, it will be Hindi or English. Third language, in Hindi-speaking states it will be English or a modern Indian language. In the non-Hindi-speaking state, it will be English or a modern Indian language. Z. Policy codification. In the 1968 National Policy on Education, based on the Kothari Commission, the 1968 NPE formally adopted the formula. Z. New Education Policy NEP 2020, new flexibility with old foundations. NEP 2020 retains the spirit of the 3-language formula but removes rigidity. States are free to choose any 2 Indian languages and 1 foreign language. No language will be imposed, reaffirming federal and cultural sensitivities. Encourages learning in mother tongue home language till at least grade 5, optionally till grade 8. Society or social issues. Significance of implementing the 3-language formula. Z. Promotes national integration while preserving diversity. It ensures students in Hindi-speaking and non-Hindi-speaking states develop mutual understanding of other Indian languages, fostering intercultural harmony. The Kothari Commission 1964-66 recommended the 3-language formula to balance national unity with regional linguistic autonomy. Z. Strengthens federalism through linguistic inclusion. 8th Schedule of the Constitution enlists 22 languages to be promoted equitably. Implementation of the formula operationalizes this constitutional ideal. Article 351 urges Hindi promotion without displacing other languages. Thus, the formula allows states to choose second and third languages, respecting federal structure. Z. Educational equity across regions. Helps level the playing field for students from both Hindi and non-Hindi states in national competitive exams and cultural exchange. NEP 2020 advocates that students across India should study 3 languages, at least 2 of which are Indian. This seeks to eliminate regional imbalances in language access. Z. Preservation and enrichment of Indian languages. The formula creates a functional demand for minority and classical languages, thereby preventing language death and aiding linguistic research. Inclusion of Sanskrit or Tamil is third languages can sustain classical learning and literature while increasing engagement. Mitigates linguistic hegemony. Formalizing a formula with equal respect for all scheduled languages prevents any language, e.g., Hindi, from becoming a default imposition. In politically sensitive states like Maharashtra, it guards against the perception of Hindi cultural dominance, preserving democratic consensus. Key concerns and issues in the three-language formula. Resistance in non-Hindi states. Tamil Nadu has historically opposed Hindi imposition, tracing back to the agitations 1937, 1965. The state follows a two-language policy, Tamil and English instead. The 2025 Maharashtra decision to make Hindi the default second language till Class 5 sparked political backlash, especially from regional parties. Z North-South divide. In North India, Hindi is the predominant language, but in South India, regional languages like Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam and Kannada hold stronger ground. The South perceives the policy as favoring Hindi speakers, while many in the North do not feel the need to learn a South Indian language. Uniformity. The formula is implemented unevenly. Tamil Nadu has long rejected the formula in favor of a two-language policy, Tamil jor English. Meanwhile, Hindi-speaking states rarely teach a South Indian language. Z limited language choices in practice. Though NEP 2020 allows multiple Indian language options, schools cannot realistically offer 15 jor languages. Small demand for regional languages, e.g., Tamil in Bihar, makes real choice infeasible. Students are forced to select Hindi or English, defeating the formula's pluralist intent. Z inadequate infrastructure and teacher shortage, scarcity of trained language teachers and lack of textbooks materials in regional or tribal languages. Kothari Commission had already warned of the difficulty in providing quality teaching across three languages, which still persists today. Z linguistic inequality and language hierarchy. Hindi and English enjoy dominance in governance, education, and employment, sidelining scheduled and tribal languages. Article 300 undermines federal and cultural autonomy. Central directives on language are seen as violating state powers over education and culture. Maharashtra's retreat from its Hindi push reflects how linguistic decisions must be stakeholder-driven. Way forward for strengthening the three-language formula. Z uphold linguistic federalism. All language-related policy decisions should be preceded by consultation with state governments and local stakeholders. Maharashtra's reversal shows the need for consensus-based implementation rather than top-down directives. Z flexible language choice within regional context. Encourage states to select any two Indian languages suited to their local demographic, e.g., tribal areas can include Santali or Gondi. This allows the policy to reflect linguistic realities, avoiding default reliance on Hindi. Z language infrastructure support from center. The union government must fund teacher recruitment and textbook development for all scheduled and major tribal languages. Achieve NEP 2026% of GDP education target, especially for multilingual pedagogy. Z prioritize mother tongue, a regional language in early education. As per NEP 2020, ensure mother tongue, a regional language, is the medium of instruction at least till grade 5. Z establish National Language Diversity Index and monitoring. Track the actual use of different Indian languages in education via a Language Diversity Index (LDI) reported annually. Similar indices exist for biodiversity and gender. Language can follow suit. Mass awareness campaign on linguistic equality. Launch campaigns promoting equal respect for all Indian languages, backed by cultural bodies like Sahitya Akademi. Reduces social bias towards English and Hindi and affirms the constitutional vision of India's pluralist linguistic identity. Z promoting multilingualism naturally. Census data of 2011 shows that 26% of Indians are bilingual and 7% are trilingual, with higher rates in urban areas. Rapid urbanization and labor migration are likely to increase multilingualism organically, reducing the need for compulsory language policies. Reciprocal learning encourage Hindi-speaking states to learn southern languages, e.g., Tamil, Kannada, to foster mutual respect. Conclusion: the three-language policy, rooted in constitutional and educational frameworks, seeks to foster national integration while preserving linguistic diversity. However, its success hinges on addressing regional sensitivities, ensuring resource availability, and promoting equitable language choices through federal collaboration. 2.2 Property rights for women. Context: recently, the Supreme Court affirmed that a woman from a tribal community has an equal right to her family's property. Case background: Z. tribal woman sought partition of her maternal grandmother's property since 1992. The trial court and the First Appellate Court dismissed the plea by the legal as saying their mother had no right in the property of her father. Chhattisgarh High Court 2022 denied her claim, citing the absence of specific customary law granting inheritance rights. Key issue: the Hindu Succession Act (HSA) does not apply to scheduled tribes. The Indian Succession Act, 1925, also grants states the power to exclude tribals from its provisions. Key highlights of SC judgments: Ram Charan vs Sukhram. ZSC affirmed equal inheritance rights for tribal women in ancestral property. Z struck down Chhattisgarh HCS 2022 order that denied rights citing absence of customary law. The court declared that denying inheritance to women violates Article 14 Equality before the law and Article 15(1) Prohibition of discrimination on the basis of sex of the Constitution. It also referred to Articles 38 and 46, which aim to promote justice and eliminate inequality. Observation: customs cannot remain stuck in time, and must not deprive rights. Recommendations: in the December 2022 case, the SC advised the centre to look into the matter and if required, amend the provisions of the Hindu Succession Act (HSA). Major legislative reforms: Hindu Women's Rights to Property Act, 1937, conferred new rights on widows, entitling them to their husband's property for maintenance, though it was a limited life estate and did not provide rights to daughters. Hindu Succession Act (HSA) 1956, repealing the 1937 Act and granting absolute property rights to Hindu women. It made daughters, widows, and mothers class I legal heirs, eligible to receive property from a deceased male Hindu. Hindu Succession Amendment Act (HSAA) 2005, this marked a revolutionary transformation. Equal coparcenary rights, it modified Section 6 of the HSA 1956, bringing all daughters married or unmarried on par with sons as equal claimants in JFP by birth. This right could not be willed away. Daughters could also ask for partition and act as Kartas managers of JFP. Agricultural land, it deleted the discriminatory clause in Section 4(2) of HSA in 1956, giving all Hindu women inheritance rights in agricultural land equal to their brothers, overriding inconsistent state laws. Retrospective application: the Supreme Court later clarified that daughters have coparcenary rights by birth, and this right is not dependent on whether their father was alive on September 9, 2005, the date of the amendment's enactment. This "once a daughter, always a daughter" principle solidified their claims. Customary laws and constitutional rights: customary laws, traditional, community-specific rules governing inheritance and property, often rooted in cultural, religious, or tribal practices. Specific customary law, Section 20 of the Santhal Pargana Tenancy Act, 1949, allows a woman to inherit her father's property if she marries a man and makes him a ghar jamai resident son-in-law during the father's lifetime. These vary widely across regions and communities in India. This highlights the conditional nature of some existing customary provisions compared to the constitutional ideal of rights. Constitutional rights, legal guarantees under the Indian Constitution, particularly Articles 14 Equality before law, 15 Discrimination and 21 Right to life and personal liberty, which support gender equal property rights. Customary laws and women's property rights. Z. Patriarchal bias. Many customary laws favor male heirs, restricting women's access to ancestral property. Example, in some Hindu communities pre-2005, daughters were excluded from copacenary rights under Mitikshara. Certain Northeast Indian tribes often prioritize male lineage. Z. Regional variations. Customs differ across communities, e.g., matrilineal systems in Kerala Nair community grant women more rights compared to patrilineal systems elsewhere. Z. Religious influence. Islamic personal law allocates women a smaller share, e.g., half of a male's share, while some tribal customs exclude women entirely from land ownership. Z. Lack of codification. Many customary laws are unwritten, leading to inconsistent application and disputes. Challenges in implementation and enforcement. Z. Social barriers. Deep-rooted patriarchy. Property ownership viewed as male prerogative, women expected to depend on male relatives, pressure to waive claims to maintain family harmony, often. Economic dependency. Lack of independent income discourages women from challenging patriarchal norms. Asserting rights can lead to ostracization, conflict, and Z. Legal and administrative barriers. Lack of awareness. Many rural women are unaware of their legal rights, limited access to education and information. Limited legal aid, inadequate access to affordable and quality legal services, especially in rural areas. Lengthy complex judicial processes, delays, backlogs, and costs deter women. Property disputes drag on for years. Judicial bias, ambiguity, conflicting rulings and patriarchal predispositions, though improving, can still hinder justice. Fragmented legal framework. Coexistence of multiple legal systems creates confusion and jurisdictional conflicts. Z. Tribal communities in the test of Hindization. HSA 1956 explicitly excludes scheduled tribes (STS) unless notified by the central government. Section 2(2). Historically, courts adopted a test of Hindization, requiring tribal women to prove abandonment of customary laws and adoption of Hindu practices to access HSA provisions. Madhu Kishwar or Oz. We. State of Bihar or Oz 1996 court defended tribal customs, fearing an influx of claims, recognized livelihood rights for widows. Minority judgment argued inconsistency with fundamental rights. Karthik Oraung v. David Munshi, ST status remains intact for inheritance even after conversion to Christianity. Way forward. Strengthening legal reforms, extend the Hindu Succession Act to all tribal communities, ensuring equal inheritance rights. Z. Improving awareness. Community-based programs to raise awareness about women's inheritance rights, especially in rural and tribal areas. Aid. Ensure affordable legal support for women to claim their Z. Encouraging social change. Engage community leaders in promoting the adoption of gender-equal inheritance practices. Harmonizing customary and statutory laws. Ensure that customary laws are aligned with constitutional principles of equality and non-discrimination. Promoting gender equality in judicial rulings. Encourage judicial consistency in upholding women's rights. Reducing biases undermine gender equality. Conclusion. Ancestral property rights for women, reinforced by landmark laws and judicial precedents, mark a significant step toward gender equality. However, bridging the gap between constitutional guarantees and customary practices remains critical to empower women economically and socially. 2.3 Dowry deaths in India. Context: recently, various cases of dowry-related deaths have been reported from across India. Recent incidents from Uttar Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Chandigarh, and Delhi highlight the grim reality young women too face harassment, assault, and even death due to dowry demands. Understanding dowry or dowry death. Dowry. As per the Dowry Prohibition Act, 1961, dowry is defined as any property or valuable security given or agreed to be given, either directly or indirectly, by one party to a marriage to the other, by the parents of either party, or any other person, to either party or any other person, at or before or after the marriage, in connection with the marriage. Dowry death. As per Section 80 of the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita (BNS), formerly IPC Section 304B, a woman's death caused by burns, bodily injury, or occurring under unnatural circumstances within 7 years of marriage is classified as a dowry death. Punishment: rigorous imprisonment for a minimum of 7 years, which may extend to life imprisonment. Root causes of dowry deaths. Cultural and social factors. Cultural entitlement or traditions. Despite being illegal since 1961, dowry persists, often disguised as gifts or stridhan. A girl's worth is wrongly judged by the dowry she brings, perpetuating this harmful norm. Patriarchy or gender inequality. Women are often viewed as economic burdens. Patriarchal mindsets lead to coercion, control, and violence when dowry demands are unmet. Patriarchality. After marriage, women move into the husband's family, often losing the immediate support system of their natal home, making them more vulnerable to abuse. Hypergamy or caste pressure. The desire to marry into higher status families increases dowry expectations, particularly under existing caste and kinship systems. Social acceptance or fear of shame. Dowry is often socially accepted. Families fear social stigma if they don't comply, leading them to yield to pressure. Economic factors. Greed or financial gain. Marriages are frequently treated as opportunities for financial gain, with demands for cash, vehicles, or property from the groom's side. Current affairs. Consumerism or grand weddings. Rising consumer culture and social media pressure for lavish weddings inflate dowry expectations. Normalization of violence. Domestic abuse, including verbal, emotional, and physical cruelty, is often accepted as a part of marital life, keeping women silent. This normalization leads directly to dowry-driven murders, accounting for over 6,100 deaths between 2017 and 2022, primarily in West Bengal, Orissa, and Bihar. Consequences of the dowry system. Gender-based abuse and violence. Women face escalating physical, emotional, and psychological abuse when dowry expectations are unmet. This includes domestic violence, intimidation, and constant harassment by in-laws. Reinforcement of patriarchal norms. Dowry solidifies patriarchal structures, treating women as inferior and economically dependent, thereby perpetuating gender inequality from the very beginning of marriage. Dowry deaths and suicides. In extreme cases, prolonged torture and mental trauma result in dowry deaths, bride burning, or suicide, tragically often within the first few years of marriage. Women's financial dependence. The dowry system undermines women's control over assets and promotes economic dependency on husbands and in-laws, severely limiting their autonomy and decision-making power. Perpetuation of harmful stereotypes. The practice reinforces the demeaning belief that women are liabilities or commodities, eroding their dignity and personhood in both public and private spheres. Key challenges in addressing dowry deaths. Legal and institutional gaps. Weak law enforcement. Laws like the Dowry Prohibition Act and Sections 80 or 86 of the BNS exist but are often enforced. Low conviction rates. Despite thousands of reported cases, very few perpetrators are punished. Of the 6,500 cases sent to trial annually, only approximately 100 result in convictions, with the rest remaining pending or dismissed. Delayed justice, slow investigations and lengthy trials discourage families from pursuing justice. Only 4,500 of 7,000 annual cases are charge-sheeted, with many dismissed as false or facing investigation delays exceeding 6 months. Z. Underreporting, fear of social stigma, immense family pressure, and perceived police indifference often result in cases going unreported, especially in rural and conservative settings. Z. Victim blaming or social pressure. Victims are frequently disbelieved, blamed for their situation, or pressured to reconcile, which silences complaints and undermines justice. Z. Police judiciary disconnect, lack of coordination, slow charge sheet filing, often taking over 2 months, and mediation over legal action dilute the seriousness of the crime. Z. Inadequate investigations. Many cases are mishandled or dismissed for lack of evidence, often due to lack of police training in sensitive investigation or systemic biases, further eroding trust in the justice system. Society or social issues. Way forward. Strengthen investigation or fast-track justice, prioritize timely charge sheeting, enhance forensic capacity, and establish more fast-track courts to reduce judicial delays and increase conviction rates. Z. Empower women economically, scale up access to quality education, vocational skilling, and financial inclusion through schemes like Beti Bachao Beti Padhao, Mudra Yojana, and Sukanya Samriddhi. Strictly enforce laws like the RTE Act and PCMA Prohibition of Child Marriage Act to delay early marriages and promote women's autonomy. Z. Say for tech-based reporting, launch and widely publicize anonymous digital portals and WhatsApp helplines. Crucially, ensure robust legal protection for complainants and whistleblowers to encourage reporting without fear of retaliation. Z. Police sensitization or legal enforcement. Provide specialized training to police to treat dowry-related cases with sensitivity and as serious criminal offenses. Ensure prompt FIRs, thorough investigations, and strict action against perpetrators from the outset, moving away from mediation in criminal cases. Z. Community vigilance or legal literacy. Promote grassroots awareness campaigns, form active community vigilance committees, and widely disseminate legal literacy programs to enable early intervention and support for victims. Z. Leverage education and media. Integrate gender equality and anti-dowry education into school curricula from a young age. Encourage media to positively portray dowry-free marriages and actively challenge regressive social norms, rather than inadvertently promoting consumerism that fuels dowry. Conclusion. Dowry deaths violate constitutional rights to equality Article 14, Life and Dignity Article 21, and obstruct 5 Sudanese pounds gender equality, and 16 Sudanese pounds justice. Eliminating them requires legal enforcement, gender sensitization, and societal reform rooted in equality and dignity. Context. While addressing the JITEM Youth Conclave 2025, the Lok Sabha Speaker emphasized the role of social organizations in the holistic development of society and the nation is extremely important. Z. The conclave was organized by JAN International Trade Organization (JITO). About social organizations. Z. Social organizations are non-state, non-profit entities such as NGOs, civil society organizations CSOs, community-based organizations CBOs, religious institutions, philanthropic bodies, trade unions, and informal local collectives working for social welfare. Operate independently of the state, but often complement government efforts. Key roles of social organizations. Z. Policy advocacy and influence. Advocate for marginalized groups, influence policy decisions, and bring grassroots issues to the forefront. Right to Information RTI Act, 2005, Mazdoor Kisan Shakti Sangathan (MKSS) led the movement, enhancing transparency in governance. Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, 2016, advocacy by National Centre for Promotion of Employment for Disabled People (NCPEDP) drove its implementation. Z Social Service Delivery fill gaps in public services, especially in underserved areas, by providing healthcare, education, sanitation, and disaster relief. Goonj Go provided relief during COVID-19, addressing basic needs like clothing and food for vulnerable communities. Z Governance and Accountability act as watchdogs, monitoring government programs, conducting social audits, and exposing corruption. EDR monitors electoral processes, promoting transparency in political funding. MKSS pioneered participatory social audits in Rajasthan, ensuring accountability in welfare schemes. Community mobilization and empowerment mobilize communities, raise awareness about rights, and build local leadership. Self-Employed Women's Association Seva organizes 2.9 million informal sector women workers across 18 states, advocating for their rights and economic empowerment. Vijaya Foundation focuses on protecting children's rights through community-driven initiatives. Environmental conservation and climate action address environmental challenges, promote sustainable practices, and influence climate policies. Centre for Science and Environment CSE shaped India's climate policy through research, contributing to stricter vehicle emission norms and renewable energy promotion. Digital rights and cybersecurity protect digital rights, promote cybersecurity, and ensure equitable access to technology. Internet Freedom Foundation IFF advocates against Aadhaar-based surveillance, promoting data privacy and net neutrality. Civic engagement and participatory democracy promote active citizenship, encourage participation in governance, and deepen democracy. PRS Legislative Research enhances public understanding of legislative processes. MKSS encourages participatory governance through social audits. Challenges faced by social organizations in India. Z. Regulatory and legal hurdles, complex registration procedures under Societies Registration Act, FCRA, or Trusts Act. Tightened restrictions under the Foreign Contribution Regulation Amendment Act 2020. NGOs face restrictions on receiving foreign funds and sub-granting. Amnesty International shut its India operations in 2020 citing FCRA license suspension. As of 2023, over 6,600 NGOs lost FCRA registration. Resource constraints and funding dependence, reliance on foreign aid, donor funding, or CSR corporate social responsibility makes long-term planning difficult. Core costs, staff salaries, training often go unfunded. Many grassroots NGOs in India operate with budgets under 10 lakh rupees and struggle to retain skilled staff. Lack of institutional capacity, poor documentation, low-tech adoption, and weak monitoring limit scalability and credibility. Fragmented leadership and absence of second-rung leadership reduces sustainability. In tribal and rural India, many NGOs lack skilled personnel to manage digital records, e-governance tools, or impact evaluations. Fragmentation and duplication, thousands of small organizations operate without coordination, leading to overlap in services and wastage of effort. Absence of collective platforms limits voice and scale. 40. Society or social issues. Z. Accountability and trust deficit, accusations of corruption, fund mismanagement, or foreign influence erode public trust. Purnaviram. Lack of mandatory social audits, performance metrics, or ethical guidelines. Allegations of fund misuse in high-profile NGOs during the Anna Hazare movement triggered demands for regulatory scrutiny. Urban bias and exclusion. NGOs are mostly concentrated in urban areas and elite-run, creating disconnect with rural tribal realities. Exclusion of marginalized voices from leadership roles in the sector. Fewer Dalit or Adivasi-led NGOs receive visibility or funding despite representing vulnerable communities. Digital and technological backwardness. Many grassroots organizations lack digital tools for outreach, fundraising, or data reporting. During COVID-19, tech-savvy NGOs mobilized relief faster, e.g., Give India, Keto, while traditional groups struggled to adapt to online systems. Way forward for social organizations. Z. Reforming regulatory frameworks for greater flexibility, streamline procedures under FCRA, Societies Registration Act, and other regulations to make it easier for genuine social organizations to function. Implement uniform compliance norms across states, allowing NGOs to work without excessive bureaucratic obstacles. Strengthening public-private partnerships, promote cooperation over confrontation, build partnerships between the state and social organizations for resource mobilization and scalable solutions. Create funding mechanisms that pool resources from CSR, philanthropy, and government to enhance NGOs' operational capacity. Capacity building and digital transformation. Invest in capacity building at the grassroots level, focusing on leadership training, digital tools, and impact measurement. Enable NGOs to adopt technology for outreach, monitoring, and data reporting, ensuring digital literacy even in rural areas. Z. Promoting transparency and accountability. Encourage NGOs to conduct social audits, ensuring transparency and accountability in financial reporting and project outcomes. Develop standardized systems for NGOs to track their impact and communicate results effectively to stakeholders. Encouraging collaboration and networking among NGOs. Facilitate platforms for collaboration among diverse social organizations to share knowledge, resources, and best practices. Build national and regional networks that amplify the voice of smaller organizations and coordinate efforts to reduce redundancy. Fostering inclusivity and representation of marginalized groups. Ensure that Dalit, Adivasi, women, and other marginalized groups lead social organizations and decision-making processes. Encourage leadership diversity within social organizations to ensure the representation of socially excluded communities. Building sustainable and long-term models. Shift from donor dependence to sustainable models that include local fundraising, social enterprises, and community-based resources. Provide NGOs with the tools to diversify revenue streams and reduce over-reliance on external funding. Conclusion. Social organizations are pivotal in driving holistic development by addressing service gaps, empowering marginalized groups, and fostering ethical governance. By overcoming challenges through regulatory reforms, digital transformation, and collaboration, they can amplify their contribution to achieving Viksit Bharat 2047.